the institutional framework that we have in place in southeast Queensland is now built around the raft of policy, legislation and regulation, most of which you will be aware of in terms of the Water Acts, the Water Supply Act, the environmental legislation, the planning legislation, the raft of regulations that sit below all of those pieces of legislation in terms of ensuring the safety and reliability of our water supply, particularly our potable water supply. The supply chain approach that's been taken in southeast Queensland by aggregation at the bulk level, having a grid manager as the wholesale exchange from the bulk to the distribution retail and the customers, is really depicted there around the particular assets and the mode of operation as well. The other important stakeholders and government entities that will come into play more and more will be the Queensland Competition Authority, and I'll explain where they sit. And that's going to be actually important in terms of, in the long term, in terms of how distributed systems and substitution fit into the overall marketplace. Our customers, of course, which are the most important thing on the sheet, are largely in southeast Queensland, potable supply, with the recycled water going to the power stations, some rural, still quite a fair amount of rural supply from the surface water systems, and of course some supply to Toowoomba Regional Council. Queensland, the Queensland Water, the amendments in 2006 identified 3 key areas to help achieve the level of sustainability and security that was required in southeast Queensland. That was triggered around the establishment of the Queensland Water Commission, the establishment of the wholesale market, and the implementation and the making of what is known as regional water security programs. And that's something that the Minister is involved in. Queensland Water Commission has an advisory role to the Minister to advise on the desired level of service objectives, and that is simply put, it's the objectives to which we will run the system to, the entire supply system to, in order to achieve the level of security that we promise to the community. And I can see we've got Owen here, Owen Droop here tonight, and Owen has certainly worked with us very much on those sorts of hydrology aspects. The Commission also has a role in terms of advising the Minister on water supply matters generally, demand management, the facilitation and the implementation of the programs, and the imposition and enforcement of restrictions. I've now brought onto the screen the market aspects. The box in the middle is the water grid manager. That is described as the wholesale exchange for what are known as declared water services, which is essentially the provision of bulk services. It's the services that the bulk entities provide to the grid manager. The grid manager under this model is actually the owner of the water. So he owns that entity owns the allocations. The bulk entities own the infrastructure and provide the services to get that water there. So at the bulk end we have SEQ Water, which you'd be familiar with, who own the surface water storages and the water treatment plants. We have Water Secure, again, the purified recycled facilities and the desalination plant, and we have Link Water that owns the big pipes, that is the transport entity. So in that system you have handover points from SEQ Water and Water Secure into the Link Water system, and then through the Link Water system you go direct to the bulk customers, being either power stations or Toowoomba. Link Water is not involved, of course, in rural supply, comes largely directly from SEQ Water, and then substantially the bulk distribution goes to the retail and distribution systems to what we probably generally call the reticulated system. Though That has been, and many of you in this room would understand, has been in the domain of the 10 regional councils, and from the 1st of July 2010, that will then, the distribution and retail will be operated by the 3 council-owned entities which have formed from a northern cluster, which is Unity Water being Sunshine Coast and Moreton Bay, Queensland Urban Utilities, which is the central cluster, which is Brisbane, Ipswich, Somerset, Scenic Rim and Lockyer, and the southern group, which is Gold Coast, Logan and Redlands, being all connects. Now, the water grid manager owns the water, buys the services effectively from the bulk suppliers and sells the water to the distribution and the distributor retailers, who then supply customers, residential and non-residential customers. The next and important part of the framework is that the Queensland Water Commission is required to provide the information to the Minister through a process of options in order for him to be able to make the Regional Water Security Program. That is around regionally significant projects, and there is a prescription as to the sort of information we need to provide for the Minister to make that program. It is, Belinda mentioned in the introduction that we will talk about the process that we will be deploying. There isn't a statutory process for us to deploy in terms of forming our views as to what goes into those options, but we are seeking to make more explicit and to set out, and we're at the beginning of a journey on that, but we will continue to build on it and make it more explicit and public, the processes that we will follow, because it is important that, particularly when we go to innovation and the development of distributed systems, that there is an opportunity for proponents with major distributed systems that could become major regionally significant projects, to be able to put those projects forward to be assessed on equal footing and against the same sort of criteria as potentially a desalination plant would be assessed. That is very much work in progress. We're at the front end of the journey of that, but ultimately for a project to get into effectively to get into the regionally significant area, it's going to have to be something that makes a significant difference at the regional level. The same sort of processes, of course, apply at the bulk level and also at the distributor retailer level, and I think quite a bit of activity, particularly around distributed and local solutions, will go on at that level as well. The other thing that makes this work from the security perspective is the system operating plan, which the Queensland Water Commission makes, and that is the mechanism by which we provide guidance to the grid manager and basically the rules about how the grid manager operates the day-to-day operations of the grid and the amount of grid water that he can enter into contract for, and the risk or the freedom that he's got to operate within the forward-looking projections of the likelihood of reductions in surface water storage. So it's all linked back to the desired level of service objectives, and it does provide, if you like, an envelope within which the grid manager can seek to reduce costs. And the sorts of things we're talking about there is giving the grid manager the freedom to make choices about a lower cost solution when it doesn't impede on the overall security.